Shamai. UAS, ukulele acquisition syndrome. It is real. Can you have too many ukuleles? Right, let's just talk about a few things. First of all, this isn't specific to ukuleles. I do really like the UAS bit. I've suffered from GAS, no, not that kind of gas, gear acquisition syndrome for decades. In the bass world, we don't tend to call it bass acquisition syndrome because that would just spell out bass. So it tends to be called gear acquisition syndrome. Now, whether that's come from guitar acquisition, I don't know. But it's not just related to ukuleles, you'd be glad to know. Although in some respect, it's actually better on the ukes. I'll talk about that in a minute. Is it bad? For me, I don't think so. But again, I will mention the pros and cons of it in a minute. But something you do actually have to think about is, are we collectors generally? Because that could also have a little bit of an impact as to how many ukuleles you end up owning. So let's talk about collecting in general to start with. I am a collector. I've never denied that. Ask anybody I know. Obviously, ukuleles, instruments in general. I had a little bit of a Smurf habit a few years ago. If you don't believe me, go and put in Smurf collection into YouTube. This room actually used to be housing one of the largest Smurf collections in the UK, mainly because I actually have another music room downstairs. Don't get me wrong, I've always collected musical gear, all right? But I do think that's a factor, whether you collect things generally. I also collect shoes and lots of other bits and pieces. So, is it bad? Right, let's look at the pros and cons of gear acquisition for a second. It costs money, ultimately. You need space to put all your gear. And you've got to sort of, how can I put this diplomatically, okay it with your other halves. I have a very, very understanding husband. He also has various gear acquisition syndrome problems. He owns quite a few musical instruments actually that he doesn't play, but that's another story. So you've got space, you've got money, you've got endearing partners or understanding families. Okay, so why is UAS different? Right, as a classical musician, I only ever played one cello when cello was my main instrument. As a double bass player, I only ever played one double bass until I sort of went pro, and then I did actually need to have a couple of instruments. One was my best performing instrument, another one was what I call my muddy field bass. In other words, if I had a gig which I didn't want to use a very expensive instrument for, I'd pull that one out. Which leads me back to ukuleles. Ukulele players, right. Where do I start? I bought my first ukulele. Now, relatively, they're cheaper compared to lots of other instruments. By the time I retired from playing double bass, my main instrument, you're talking tens of thousands of pounds. My first ukulele I bought for about 50 or 60 pounds. I've bought much, much cheaper ones than that. And suddenly then, money is relative to it, okay? So how can you justify lots and lots of ukuleles apart from the fact they're cheaper than some other instruments? All right, it's quite simple. You get different sizes, you get different qualities, whether it's solid or laminate. You get acoustic and electric and electroacoustic. You get different strings, so you could have a high G or a low G, or obviously baritone ukulele as well, which is all completely different strings. So there is a little bit of justification there, and that's what I use anyway, as to why I would have several instruments. All right, so just to give an example, this is my Flight Voyager concert ukulele. This is my Flight Voyager tenor ukulele. So they're different, so it's allowed. I had this one, I bought this one last summer. It was my birthday present. I'm not actually a tenor player. I normally prefer concert. But I absolutely loved this ukulele. Every single thing about it. Just from the fact it was an electroacoustic, but passive, so I didn't have to worry about batteries or anything like that. It had a lovely, it's all solid, so it's a solid spruce top, solid acacia back and side, stunning headstock on it, and something really important that I absolutely love is the comfort side. So when this arrived, and I absolutely loved it, and I meant properly loved this, and then Flight announced that in fact they were sort of discontinuing this kind because they put in active pickups into a lot of their electroacoustics. My mind went into, I've got to get the concert now before they run out. All right. I never intended to get this, but I absolutely wanted to get it before it got discontinued. All right, so that's sort of one reason for having different ones. Obviously, just of the size, okay? Soprano, concert, tenor, and then baritone. Bass ukuleles now, yeah, I've got a lot of bass guitars. I've always had a lot of bass guitars. Again, some of them are fretless, some of them are fretted. Some of them are cheaper. And again, I've always justified, I need cheap instruments to be able to take back and forth to school because I don't want to take my best ones into school. So some of them are cheaper, some of them are electroacoustic, bass guitars as well. And then when I was thinking about what I was going to say in this video, I realised that I'm now up to 4 double basses and have been for a couple of decades actually. All different. My best bass, my muddy field bass, my electric double bass, and a little double bass for teaching on. I've only got 2 cellos, if that makes you feel any better. Bass ukuleles, again, they are all different. Electroacoustic, fretless, electroacoustic, fretted. Solid body round wound strings, solid body rubber strings, polyurethane strings. But this is what I mean with the ukuleles. You can justify it a lot easier. Will it make you a better player? Yes and no. All right, there is no real answer. Basically, if you've got better instruments, that is going to A, encourage you more to play, and B, if you're getting a better sound off a better instrument, it's going to encourage you more. Some instruments are easy to play, and again, having different instruments to try and play gives you an idea of what you like and what you don't like. But having loads of ukuleles isn't going to make you a better player. The only way you're going to become a better player is practicing and playing. All right? But there is a field of thought that by moving up into better instruments, or even just being able to go, I'll try that one now, you are playing more, so therefore you are actually improving your playing. But having loads of ukuleles isn't going to make you a better player, but it might encourage you to play more ukulele, therefore making you a better player. a really interesting little conversation. Somebody asked me a question in the comments, Old Man Zen, and he made the point that once you start playing better instruments, better quality instruments, and he was actually referring to acoustic guitar, you tend not to go back and play the cheaper instruments. To a point, I completely agree with that sentiment. I take a cello, for example. All right, I've got quite a decent, well set up, nice to play cello. If somebody gives me a school cello to play where the bridge might not have been set up or the strings are dreadful, it's really difficult to play. All right, with the uke, as I explained to him, I haven't actually been playing ukulele that long. I bought my first uke maybe 5 or 6 years ago and didn't actually start playing it properly straight away. So in my mind, a lot of the instruments you've seen me playing in this video and you've seen around the room, they're all relatively new to me. So I can still play them and enjoy still playing them. Some of my cheapest ukes have a low G on, for example, or will be one of my cheap ones that I'll go bashing about with electric pedals and things. All right. Plus, as well, as a school teacher, I wouldn't take something like this into school on a daily basis. I would take one of my camise ukes or one of my cheaper electroacoustic ukes or one of my cheaper bass ukuleles into school. I might take this on the odd day just to sort of show off, or if we had a concert or something, but as a daily carrying around my ukulele, I wouldn't take an expensive one in. I'd take a really cheap one in, and this is where I'm always on the lookout for very playable, cheap ukuleles. If I'm sat downstairs, I don't watch telly much, but if I'm sat downstairs in front of the computer, I'll grab, it's normally a cheap uke that's sitting round downstairs gathering dust. Mainly because I don't want it getting damaged if an animal knocks it over or I drop it or anything. All right, so I do still play cheaper ukes as well, but I completely understand the sentiment of once you go on to a better uke, it's difficult to go back. We've got completely different kinds of ukulele as well, apart from the electric, maybe the solid body with steel strings. We've got our banjoleles. I didn't know if that was in tune or not then. Okay. Again, a completely different sound. Same to play, but an awful lot of uke players have a banjolele in their arsenal as well. And so have I. So why is UAS, ukulele acquisition syndrome, such a massive thing? I refuse to call it a problem. They're small. All right, I can fit an awful lot more of these in the house than double basses. They're relatively less expensive. I say that, yes, you can get very expensive ukuleles, thousands and thousands of pounds worth. But for not even normal, cheaper ukuleles, this one cost around about the £150, £200 mark. It's laminated, it's a beautiful uke. Now, that relative to even a bass guitar is very cheap. And once you start getting into better bass guitars or even solid body ukuleles, electric bass ukuleles, then the money goes up. But generally speaking, you could easily have a different sized ukulele or different tunings and different strings or different qualities, all for a relatively low price. And because they're so small and you can get your storage sorted, you can easily keep them in the house. Mustn't forget, though, it isn't just the ukuleles. By the time you get your cases, your straps, if you start going down the route of electric stuff as well, your pedals, your pedal boards. I've got multi-track recorders in the house as well as just piles of equipment. All right, gear acquisition syndrome. It isn't just your ukuleles in the end. So is UAS bad? I personally don't think so. I think you can probably go a little bit nuts if you're you could end up having my husband keeps threatening me, one in, one out. He hasn't really enforced it yet. However, I did actually give away a ukulele to a really good friend the other day, just because I thought, I don't play this one very often. I wasn't going to sell it. That's something else as well. In terms of relative value, I know I've got, for example, a double bass in the house, that the older it's getting, the more expensive it's getting. When you're talking about cheap-ish ukuleles, don't expect them to go up in price, all right? They're not an investment purpose at all. They are fun. So, UAS, is it okay? Well, as long as you're not stretching yourself financially and, putting yourself in a massive amount of debt to have a wall full of ukuleles, or you're not risking marital bliss by annoying spouses or family members, or you're not literally hoarding rooms full of ukuleles, I don't think there's a lot of harm in it at all. But I just wanted to express what I think about UAS and GAS and all these other acquisition syndromes. So there we are. No need to feel guilty if you do believe you've got UAS. You're certainly not the only one. And I know I'll be buying more ukuleles in the future. You know what to do. If you've got a comment or a question, please feel free to leave it below. Give us a like if you've enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new ukulele videos. Thank you for watching.